We will now consider log number 5206 by Mr. Norcross of New Jersey. For what purposes, gentlemen from New Jersey, seek recognition?
Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will please distribute the amendment. Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey for the purpose of explaining his amendment.
Thank you, Chairman. Very simply, my amendment prohibits the use of 26 funds for the Department of Defense to be spent in implementing Executive Order 14251, which relates to Labor Management Relations Program to preserve collective bargaining for Department of Defense employees. Earlier this year, the Trump administration launched one of the biggest attacks on American labor in history, stripping collective bargaining from over 1 million federal workers, including the Department of Defense. While justification for this executive order was national security concerns, the facts tell a very different story. Collective bargaining is workers' strongest tool for fair wages, safe workplaces, and certainly dignity on the job. This executive order is a blatant union busting. It's clear that this is an effort not based on national security concerns, but instead on retaliation for labor unions defending the members' rights and as a tactic to make it easier to fire employees. Unions are formed by workers coming together through a democratic process and agreeing to act collectively. Any DoD employee union was formed when workers exercised their right and their voice in voting in a democratic process. For over 60 years, they've had this through both Democrat and Republican administrations. The idea of forming a union is fundamental and a right under our laws. Trump executive order seeks to silence workers and override their sacred vote to form a union. And to quote President Trump, let's stop the steal. Let's urge a yes vote on this to give collective bargaining rights back to the employees who earned it. I yield.
Gentleman yielded. We now go to the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I oppose this amendment. This amendment would prohibit funds from being used to implement the President's executive order on collective bargaining in the Department of Defense. That's a serious overreach. Let's be clear, the number one priority of the Department of Defense must be providing for the national defense, not creating jobs programs that only serve to slow down the department's priorities. This executive order simply says that when it comes to defense, the President needs flexibility to act quickly and to act decisively, not get bogged down in union negotiations. And the President is well within the authority granted by the Civil Service Reform Act to limit collective bargaining with federal unions with agencies that have national security missions. In fact, he is not the first president to do so. Previous presidents have used the national security exemption to prohibit collective bargaining with the CIA and other national security agencies since its inception. The goal of the SPEED Act is to reduce regulations, build more, and go faster. This amendment runs opposite to the committee's priorities, and the amendment needlessly restricts the President's constitutional authority to manage the executive branch and protect the nation. Congress shouldn't tie the commander-in-chief's hands just to score political points with unions. Further, the President's executive order is working its way through the court system, and it would be premature for this committee to object before a full judicial review can be completed. I will oppose all amendments that place unnecessary limitations on the President and Secretary of Defense's authority to dynamically manage their workforce. This amendment does just that. The bottom line, this amendment is premature, it undermines executive authority, and it's a threat to operational readiness at a time when flexibility is key. I urge my colleagues to vote no, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am a co-sponsor of Mrs. Norcross' amendment. This concerns the rights of DoD employees, and I'll be voting in favor of the amendment. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California, Mr. Carbajal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to yield my time to Mr. Norcross.
Thank you. Just to give me an opportunity to comment on some of what we just heard. The fact of the matter is federal employees are not allowed to go on strike. That is not a concern. That is something that has not happened. 60 years through 2 administrations, Republican and Democrat. There are no collective bargainings that are up for renewal in the next 2 years. They've already been extended through. So the idea to falsely accuse this, I think, is disingenuous. We're talking about silencing the voice of workers. It happens across the board. They work together over the years. There's never been a complaint previous, and all of a sudden, without any justification, not even relating to any complaints that came from anywhere, he woke up. This is clearly taking the ability and making the president so he can fire anybody for any reason without retort. With that, I yield back to the gentleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Carbajal yields back. Mr. Whitesides of California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Mr. Norcross for his years of leadership on this issue. I support this amendment because of something we all know to be true. Our national defense is powered by more than uniforms. Civilian personnel are engineers, analysts, logisticians, scientists, the backbone of our defense infrastructure. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of civilian personnel in my district who work day in, day out to improve our defense capabilities. Allowing these workers to advocate for their right to fair pay and benefits strengthens, not weakens, mission readiness. When civilian workers have a voice, we reduce turnover, improve morale, and retain the expertise that keeps systems running and missions on track. This is about respect for service. DoD civilians support our troops every day. They deserve basic workplace protections, the same rights we extend to workers in other federal agencies. This collaboration leads to smarter operations and better, more efficient progress on the critical national security programs that we need. Bargaining means faster problem solving, better communication, and more efficient use of taxpayer dollars. Suppressing workplace rights and collective bargaining creates instability, not flexibility. If we want a modern, resilient civilian workforce, we need to give them a seat at the table, not take it away. In my district, which is home to some of the most cutting-edge national security innovation in the world, DoD civilians are leading the charge. They're pushing our aerospace industry into the future. We should be uplifting our workers, protecting their right to fair pay and collective bargaining, and ensuring they have the ability to provide for themselves and their families. If we send them the message that they aren't valued, not only are we not giving them the support they deserve, we could be crippling our national security. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Sorensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am proud to stand with our unions and support the amendment put forth by my friend, Representative Norcross. It is no secret that this administration is hell-bent on weakening organized labor. Stripping collective bargaining rights is just another chapter in their book. And when you look at the fine print, it will affect more than 1 million federal workers. We cannot let that happen. It's un-American because the United States of America is strong thanks to the labor movement that was built with the hard work and the determination of the men and women of the middle class. Every American deserves a fair wage, a safe workplace, good benefits, and dignity on the job. It's true everywhere, whether you work for a company back home or for the military, the greatest military in the world. I urge my colleagues to support Mr. Norcross's amendment, and I yield back.
Does any other member seek recognition on the Norcross amendment? Ms. Alfrith of Maryland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I want to extend my gratitude to my friend and colleague and hometown representative, Mr. Norcross. This amendment will simply prohibit funding from implementing the Executive Order 14251 that eliminates collective bargaining rights for 1.5 million federal employees, including most Department of Defense civilian employees, and it is single-handedly the broadest and most aggressive action taken by the federal government against labor rights in U.S. history. And as the daughter of 2 very proud civil servants, I understand the vital work that public servants do on behalf of the American people. And since the beginning of this administration, we have seen an unprecedented attack on our federal workforce. And I know our federal workers are the backbone of government services that the American people rely on, not just in my district, but across this country. So this is not about scoring political points with unions. I take umbrage with that suggestion. This is about standing up for the collective bargaining agreements that have been in place for generations. I know this because I represent 44,000 federal employees in my district, many of whom serve this nation at Fort Meade, at the United States Naval Academy, at the Coast Guard, just to name 3 installations in my district alone. I've heard from these federal employees back home, and every time I tour an installation, I ask the critical question, how many civilian employees support the critical work at that installation? And I urge my colleagues on this committee to ask that same question, because you will hear from them. They are the backbone of this national security work. And ultimately stripping federal employees of their voice on the job will impact military readiness. We'd be joking with ourselves if we didn't believe that. We cannot allow this administration to continue to take a sledgehammer to the federal workforce without some check from this legislative branch. That's what our founders had in mind, and I urge my colleagues to vote for this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Does any other member seek recognition on the Norcross amendment? No further debate. The question occurs on the amendment by Mr. Norcross. So many in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. A recorded vote is requested. Recorded vote will be postponed. We will now consider log number 5204 by Mr. Norcross. For what purposes, gentlemen, seek recognition?
Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will please distribute the amendment without objection. The reading amendments dispensed with. I reserve a point of order against the amendment. Gentleman is recognized for his amendment.
Thank you, Chairman. Very simply, this requires the Secretary of Defense to establish policies authorizing access to military installations within appropriate conditions for the purpose of union or labor organizations, representation, inspection, and cover activities. This is something I know very well for over 20 years as a business agent. The idea of going to visit my members and enforce a collective bargaining agreement would sometimes take place at these bases. Our defense industry labor union representatives are often prohibited from going to these sites for security concerns, even when those concerns could easily be addressed. The barrier that prevents labor unions from ensuring collective bargaining agreements are being followed and adhered to. All workers with collective bargaining agreements, regardless of where they work, are protected and have the right to be inspected by their CBA representatives. Very simply, back in 2017 NDAA, this very committee created an amendment that would allow Uber drivers who are picking up and dropping off at bases to be entitled to go on the bases. They too would have to follow the very same security concerns that the union reps were. Now, we've heard plenty about Uber drivers. The idea that they're allowed on base, but you will prohibit labor organizations is fundamentally wrong. The idea is there's a set of rules, we should all follow it. But unfortunately, I did not receive a waiver from Education and Workforce. Ironically, the very item that I am referring to on the Uber drivers did receive the waiver. But today it's not there, so I am going to have to withdraw that amendment, and I yield back.
Chair thanks the gentleman for withdrawing his amendment.